Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music. And here today in Studio One of the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society, I'm very delighted, privileged, and happy to be talking with a very good friend, fabulous guitar player and singer, Eleanor Ellis. Hello, Eleanor.
Hi.
Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate your coming over to being in Studio One and talking about music in your life a little bit. I guess I must have first met you at the barbershop when, even back when Archie Edwards was there. I went down a couple times, but we certainly worked together a lot to get the barbershop set up, and it's been a wonderful part of our lives, certainly for me.
Well, we attribute a lot of the success to you because when the barbershop started, there were really just three of us, me, Mike Baytop, and Miles Spicer. And we needed things and things happened. And you were something we needed and you happened.
It was kind of a group effort, but it certainly is, oh man, so fabulous. The friendships, the times playing music and everything. It's been great. But you have quite a long history with sort of this style of music and playing, and maybe we could talk a little bit about just initially, where'd you grow up, and was music part of your family life growing up? Did your parents play? Did friends play? How'd you end up with a guitar?
Okay, I grew up in a little town in Louisiana, and as a child, I guess I listened to the radio and stuff, and there were people that played, but I didn't know it because by that time they'd sort of given up on it. Like I found out that my uncle, who I just knew as someone who we would have Sunday dinner there, and then he would get in his big armchair and listen to classical music and snooze. And then Miss Lil Vernon, who lived across the street, she was a little Cajun woman, a real spitfire, so to speak. She was, and I just knew her as someone who rode horses all the time. And when I say spitfire, I don't mean anything bad, but she was feisty, okay? Mm-hmm. I didn't find out till my uncle died that they were in a band together, and Miss Lil played saxophone.
Really?
And Uncle Carol played the violin or the fiddle. And they were in some pretty rough places. They had some really wild stories to tell about, gunfights and all the rest. And so really and truly, I didn't hear a lot of live music when I was growing up. But I heard things on the radio, and I used to go out in the yard. I used to play by myself out in the yard all the time. And one of the things I would do, I would just wander around the yard just singing tunes, no wordless tunes, you know?
Huh.
So...
when you were like how old? 8?
Yeah, or
10.
Less or more,
Yeah.
And my mother would always call me, and I would, what? But...
So you liked singing?
Yeah, and it didn't have to have words or anything. I just and another thing I did, this was kind of funny. The library had a book. I had piano lessons, but they were reading, so. Uh-huh. But the library had a book of W.C. Handy songs. And I got it out one time, and I started playing them. I just loved them.
Wow.
But I was a little, I was young, really young. So I would be singing things like, there's one song that goes something like, if you want to be my man, you got to give me $40 down. And I would be like this little child. I didn't know what I was saying,
right.
but I liked the song.
Yeah.
I could still sing some of them.
So you started with piano?
Well,
For a little while.
Yeah. Well, I took for quite a while, but, it was reading. And I have this theory, which is probably not true, that if you start reading, whether it's tab or notes for piano or whatever, on a instrument, it's harder to throw that away and play it. Because the guitar I started on ear and eyes, following people around, trying to figure out what they were doing.
And when was that?
Okay, well, I used to listen to WLAC, which is a radio station a lot of people listen to. It was, it had a reach all over the United States, even like Chicago and places, I think. And they had blues shows on at night. Plus, on Sunday, they had a beautiful spiritual show. Mm-hmm. So I used to listen to that, when I was like an early teen, I suppose. And I asked my parents to give me a guitar for some occasion. And they got me a little guitar, a little
nice,
sweet little Martin. I still have it. And so then I had the guitar, so what am I going to do with it? I guess I learned how to tune it. But I used to just sit on the bed and hold the guitar and listen and think, how are they doing that? I had no idea.
I hear you. It seems like magic sometimes.
Well,
doesn't it?
Especially if you have no model,
right?
Nothing to go on. You simply have the instrument and a radio show, and nothing in between. And then they did give me get me some guitar lessons from the little college down the way, mm-hmm. but that was like doing scales and stuff, and I wasn't really interested in doing that.
Yeah.
I should be more interested now, but. I guess when I went away to school my last 2 years, so I got sort of turned on to some more music, And then when I went to college, that's when I basically really took up the guitar because I kept meeting people that played.
Huh.
We used to play down in the University Center.
Where was this?
That was the Newcomb.
Newcomb College?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Back before it was swallowed up by Tulane. So I started meeting people, and then I'd go down to the quarter, and like if I found somebody that looked like they played or had kind of long hair or whatever, I would just kind of follow them. And I mean, really and truly, I feel like, what do they say? The Lord takes care of children and fools. That turned out fine, though. So I would,
And this was in New Orleans?
This is in New Orleans,
wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of music in New Orleans.
Yeah, there is. And there was, so that was a way I really started learning, and people had that, the collection on reel-to-reel then of Harry Smith, that folklore collection.
Oh, yeah.
And so I got introduced to some songs there, and it just kind of kept going like that. That was when I really got into really playing. And I used to go to parties and stuff, and I would maybe do 2 songs, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I wasn't like really on stage except maybe a couple of times, but I kind of got a reputation on 2 songs.
Yeah. And what songs were they?
Oh, Lord knows. Probably sad love songs or something,
Yeah.
That was probably what I was into back then.
And was it roots type music all that really grabbed you your whole life, or the kind of music?
Yeah, I think so. Roots of many kinds.
Right. Right. So then you were down in Louisiana for a long time. Did you come up to D.C. later? Oh,
yeah. I got into actually playing out in Louisiana.
Okay.
I remember this friend of mine, Tony Eccles, said there's a bluegrass jam over at the Free School, and that was on Bordeaux Street. And my friend Hazel Schluter, who's part of Hazel and the Delta Ramblers, and she has a show on OZ on Sunday morning, bluegrass show. But anyway, Hazel was running it. And that's where I started to meet people. And then Hazel and I had a little duo.
Huh.
We were both kind of learning. She was learning mandolin, and I was kind of learning guitar. So we played together some. And then Luke Thompson and the Green Valley Cut-Ups.
Whoa, that's a great name.
I know. Luke, they had everything they needed, really, but they didn't really have a bass player. So they just shoved this big upright bass in my hand, and they put some tape where the frets would have been, so I would kind of know where the notes were. And they really wanted me for singing, but they did kind of need a bass player. So they gave me this bass, and I started playing it in their group. And I remember, Bruce Degrapont was in that group. He's since went on to be quite something in Cajun music, because that's what his background was. But anyway, he played banjo, and he was quite good at it. Mm-hmm. And then Jim Huey played dobro, and we had a guitar player.
So you were playing bluegrass then?
Yeah, we were doing bluegrass, and we had a regular gig at the Make Believe every Sunday, and then, we did other stuff too. And the only thing I didn't like was we had to all wear the same thing. Oh. So what we had, now he had these gorgeous green vests, Green Valley Cut-Ups, so they were beautiful green embroidered vests. And the guys looked great. They had on black pants, white shirts, the green vest, and a little black bow tie. And I said, I'm not wearing the bow tie. I wore the rest of it. And then we finally bought some sort of cowboy shirts, too, which we sometimes wore, which I liked better. But anyway, so that was it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And then after that band disintegrated or whatever, broke up, I played for a while with Bill Malone, what did he call him? His band. Anyway, Bill Malone's band. And then that was how I got up to this Maryland area, because Jim Huey had a friend he hadn't seen in a while who lived up here, and he got us a gig at the Red Fox, which was quite a club back then, and also a festival. And actually, at that point, the Hazel Dickens was on that festival, and I was so excited. I'm on the same festival as Hazel Dickens.
Nice.
Because, she's great.
Yeah.
And but anyway, we got to the Red Fox, and we did our gig. And, of course, I drove up in a car with my bass and a little bit of other stuff. And at the gig, I think the bridge collapsed on my bass. But we got it fixed fairly soon. And so anyway, but then after that, I just kept staying up here because there were a lot of gigs. I first of all stayed with a friend of my sister's, and then she and her husband left town, so I got to cat sit for another little while. And then some other friends I knew from New Orleans were here, and I got to stay in their basement. And then I met someone it just kept going like that, And so I ended up staying here, and there was a lot going on musically. So, and at that time, I'll tell you what I was doing. I was singing bluegrass, which I still like a lot. And I was also doing I found an old set list not too long ago. It's like in the age of the typewriter, right? And it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet, and it's got 3 columns on it, totally filled out with type. I mean, that was a lot of songs.
You had to play a lot of songs.
Some of them I still remember, and some of them what is this? But at any rate, so I was doing a big mix of stuff, And by the way, I need to mention real quick that in New Orleans, I met with some people who were playing on the street, which is still going on there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And the reason that I met my good friends, Candy Tolley and Gail Schaefer, because they were in New Orleans from North Carolina. And I was playing at this place called the Ivanhoe, and they came and stood in the door, and Candy yelled out something like, "You play any Hazel and Alice?" And I said, "I can't believe anybody in this town knows who that is." And then later I found them on the street, and then they said the operative words, "Well, if you ever pass through North Carolina, come by." So when I, was going up, I did, and I've been dear friends with them ever since. So I was doing a variety of stuff, and some kind of bluesy stuff, but I loved it, but I didn't think I could do it. I mean, if you're listening to Fred McDowell, do you really think you can do that?
Oh, yeah. You mean as a living, sort of?
Well, not even as a living, just period.
Oh, just do it at all.
Just like,
Well,
and
yeah.
so it's interesting the path you have to take to find your own way to something, because it's like there's a barrier in between yourself and another self as far as the sound goes, the music and everything. So after a while, there's certain things you can incorporate and then interpret. But it takes a little doing.
It takes some doing.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, just me picking up the guitar about 3 years ago and decide I want to play. It takes some doing.
You made amazing progress. You really amazed me. I mean,
that's that intention thing going on. I'm working on it. But so when did you run into Flora, and how did Flora Molton? And was that fairly after you were here for a while?
For a while, yeah. I think I met Archie Edwards first. I used to sing and also work at Food for Thought, which was on Connecticut Avenue.
Absolutely. I remember Food for Thought.
Yeah, and so Archie was playing there, and I was a hostess, which meant that I put people at their table, and then I took all the stuff off after they were through. That's what a hostess was. But anyway, I thought, he shouldn't have to pass the hat because it was a pass the hat place. Found out later that he loved passing the hat because he got to talk to everybody he stopped at their table, But I said, I'll do it for you. So I passed the hat for him that time. And we started talking, and he asked me, he said, do you play guitar? And I said, well, I play some. And he said, that's what I wanted to hear. I think Archie thought that if you were real boastful and said, oh, yeah, man, I play really good, he probably wouldn't
want to play with you.
Yeah. So anyway, but Flora was around, and a guy named Myron Samuels put on some festivals out at Oxon Hill Farm because he was working out there at the time. And he asked me, I was going to be on the festival, and so was like Roy Dunn from Atlanta and Roger Gregory, who played with him, and Eric King was out there, and Phil and John Jackson. And so Myron asked me if I would give Flora Molton and her harp player, Larry Wise, a ride to the festival. So I did. And we did our stuff. And on the way back, Flora had a guy named Ed Morris who was her guitar partner. And he basically, was a wonderful guitar player. And he took her... he booked them into the Ontario place and different clubs, which Flora loved because she was playing on the street. That was her job. And so she loved being in clubs and stuff. So Flora said, but Ed had died, so Flora asked if I wanted to play guitar with her, and I said, well, okay, I'll give it a try. I had never strictly backed up someone else before. And she gave me some tapes she had of things that she and Ed had done. And Flora played in open D. And she hinted at chord changes, but she didn't do them. She played an amazing slide, and she had an amazing voice. So what I would do when she was playing, I would just, go into drop D and just do a kind of a bass thing, basically just kind of. And then there were songs where she didn't play because she wanted a different kind of accompaniment. So I would learn as well as I could Ed's version of that and accompany her. And then she would use a shaker, and she loved to have her foot in a tambourine. And her foot was exactly the right size to put in a tambourine, but she couldn't get it out. So we'd be on stage, and she'd be jingling the tambourine with her foot. And then when it came time to walk off, she wasn't going to walk off with a tambourine on her foot. So I would have to, bend down and pull it off. And it's kind of made for some stage business, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so and was she blind? Is that?
Well, she was. I think she was legally blind, but she could see.
Yeah. Okay. And she had just been from D.C. and been playing on the streets for...
She was born in, I think, Louisa County, Virginia. There's actually a marker to her there now. And then they lived in West Virginia. When she and my friend Candy met each other, they found out part of the time, at least for her, and all the time for Candy, grew up in the same place in West Virginia, very different years, of course. Huh. And but anyway, her brother was a pastor at a church here, I think. This had happened. She came up to D.C. and she tried a lot of things to make a living, and they, for whatever reason, didn't really work out. So she started going on the street, and she said that the police would drive her off. She said, I'd go home, I'd cry, I'd pray, and I'd go back out again the next day. And, and then, of course, people got to know her and expect her to be there, and, people really cared a lot about her.
Yeah, I've heard some of her songs. I guess maybe an album that she did, and also you do some of her songs, too, and they're fabulous, powerful songs.
Oh, yeah. They really are. A friend of mine gave me a copy of this recording we did in France, which I hadn't... You
and Flora played
Flora.
it. Yeah, wow.
And I hadn't heard that in a long time because I only had a cassette copy of it, so he gave me a CD. And I was just amazed. It's really good because that was the year Flora had put out her own CD with the grant from the D.C. Humanities Council, I think, something. And so she didn't want to duplicate the songs. So she was doing songs that I think at the time she thought is kind of secondary or something. And they are great. They're really great. And I played on some of them, and I'd even forgotten some of my accompaniment that I used to do. So I was really happy to have that record of a good record of a lot of her songs, plus the one, that she put out, and the Eleanor, which was the first.
Well, that's kind of an indication of the power of music in a sense. Somebody could go out, play on the street, just play for people. People stop, get involved, listen, get to know the person. It's definitely,
that was her ministry of the street, because she did what she calls spiritual and truth music. It was it was religious, but it was also, I don't know, it was kind of universal as well, in that same spirit and feeling.
Yeah.
And people really, she was very beloved. She really was.
Yeah, I don't think I ever met her, but you went to Europe and played with Archie too, didn't you? Or was that the same trip?
Archie and Flora and I got booked in Germany.
When was that?
87.
87.
That was the year that Flora made her well, at the time it was a record. But anyway, so we went and this guy booked us and took us over there, and we played all over Germany and Belgium and places. It was really, really nice. We stayed in nice hotels, and we had a driver, who would lug our stuff. And then we Flora and I were booked at Festival Avignon and some places in France, and then it was up to us to get over there by ourselves, and that was quite something, because all of a sudden, we didn't have anybody to carry our stuff, and Archie, I remember, he would wake up, and he'd come down to breakfast, and he'd say, well, I threw away another shirt today. It was really it was just the accomplishment of the world. And meanwhile, Flora and I are, dragging our stuff around, and it was fun. And then Archie went back before Flora and I went to England. Archie went back.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, did you go over there again? Did you play another time in Europe?
I did. I played several times.
Several times?
Different places, yeah. But Flora never got to go back. She passed away before she did.
So another thing that I know about you is you're kind of a documentary historian in a sense, and I know you have at least one, I guess, movie documentary film. Blues House Party, is that the name of it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that. So how did that come about? When was that? How did that come about? You had some really good players.
Oh, yeah. And the funny thing about that is, at the time, it was just sort of documenting what is, at the time, and now it's what was. And of all the people in there, I think there are probably 4 of us that are still, no, 5 of us that are still here.
Yeah.
So it was really, you never know. I mean, you should know, but most people don't, that the present is really important, and it's not going to be here forever.
That's right.
Yeah. So anyway, basically, it was based on one of John and Coralie Jackson's house parties. You know, they would have parties, and so they were there, and also James Jackson, who played with his father. And then John D. Holman and his wife, and Frizz Holloway and his wife came in from North Carolina. And then we had Flora and Larry Wise, the harp player. And we had John Cephas and Phil Wiggins, and we had Archie Edwards. And I hope I'm not leaving anyone out. And it was a lot of talk and music together. And it was done with a couple of different grants.
Uh-huh.
And you know, that it's really a very special thing.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've seen. I think I have it right over there.
Probably do.
Probably in a cassette for a TV. You know.
A VHS thing?
VHS.
Yeah,
right.
It is out now in DVD.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I'll have to get it somehow. So I mean, why did you end up doing that?
I was already doing video. I was teaching an editing class and working for a production house at the time. And I had done some learning video, but sort of public access type stuff before that. And so this was like a chance to do a real thing, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and there were other people who were involved. I mean, the brunt of it fell on me, so to speak. You know, I mean, I pulled it together, I produced it, but also like Joe Wilson, who was with the National Council for Traditional Arts, Barry Lee Pearson out at Maryland. You know, so there were people.
And it seems to me that sort of thing is important for our era. You know, everything changes so much, and so many of the old blues guys are not around.
Yeah.
And I mean, even at when I started going to the barbershop after Archie passed, and you know, Mr. Bones and
all those guys, Mr. O'Neill,
but the NJ, but there
Jimmy
was
Smith, NJ Warren.
Such a. It just seems to me
Briscoe.
that it's, you know, that sort of community through music, the house party type thing, and documenting that was important. Mm-hmm. You think so? I mean, what would you say that, I don't know, are there any lessons in that, or what would people...
The lesson is don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
Don't take anything for granted. Don't take the present for granted, because it's if it's important, then, you know, realize that. And I'm not saying everybody has to go around with a camera, although everybody is nowadays with a phone.
That's true. Every minute.
Yeah. But I think that's one of the lessons. And then another lesson to me is that there are a lot of ways for people to connect with each other. And I think once people get to know each other, they usually... It's a good thing. It's positive.
Yeah.
It's real positive. It's more positive than just kind of in a shallow way. It's very deeply positive. And I think music does that. It does. It's like the siren song, you know. It draws people together. It draws them
people
in.
together.
Only you don't have a bad outcome, hopefully.
Right.
But I really think that's important, and it does create a kind of a sense of community. Like at the barbershop now, the blues barbershop, the Archie Edwards barbershop, there's a whole community of people, and there are people that you meet, that I've met and that have met each other and formed bands and the whole bit, who never would have known each other. Never.
It's like a family.
Yeah, it really is.
And I know I don't get down there on Saturdays as much as I used to because it's kind of halfway around the Beltway on a Saturday afternoon. But, there's meeting Miles first and then being introduced to the Blues Society, the jams at Food for Thought. I started out, I didn't even had to go out and run out and buy enough harmonicas to be able to play. I didn't know what I was doing. But then being introduced to Blues Week, and that whole community has been very special and fabulous people, wonderful people. You don't always know what they do during the day, but when you're with them, they're your friend.
Exactly, yeah. And it really is important. And that kind of thing is important. And I think it's reproduced in different ways everywhere. And even in different cultures, can come together and put music together. And, some of the great things you would hear at the Smithsonian festivals.
Right.
Great.
Yeah. So, you've been playing music, all your life, and you've played thousands of gigs and with a lot of people. And we just talked a little bit about some of the benefit of music in the community sense. Other things that you may have noticed about when people do play music, what happens when people listen, other sorts of impacts that music have or that music can have, and things that we maybe should do more of to see if we can get things going a little better,
Yeah, well, I think that this is something I just said to you, and I just thought of it right before we started talking, which is if people get to know each other, then it's really a strong, positive thing. And if people who think they're very different get to know each other, that's real important. So I think it's important to, if it's going to be music, I think it's important to let that be the first connection. Instead of saying, I don't like you, or something like that, Like if you get to know somebody really well and you still don't like them, then there might be a reason. But not always. But I do think that it's a way of reaching out and people reaching each other. And if you like the music or anything else you might have in common that you like, that creates a bond right there. Mm-hmm. And once you create enough bonds, you have done some small part of making things better, I think.
That sounds exactly right to me. Well, Eleanor, I really appreciate your taking the time to come over and talk. I didn't know some of that history about you. I'm glad to know. I guess one thing we should mention before we wrap up is that, we are kind of kin by marriage.
By several marriages.
Several marriages, which you know a lot more about than I do. The Caffrey family from Louisiana, and my Caffrey is my middle name, and of course my friend Erasmus Caffrey is family as well.
I hope he's my friend too.
he definitely is. So we do have sort of a shared family history, but I'm very happy to, have known you all those years, to know you, to call you a friend, and really just appreciate your taking the time to share some thoughts with us today.
Well, I'm very happy to have done so. It's really been interesting and fun.
Yeah, okay. Thanks very much. Eleanor Ellis, everybody. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.